So I've opened up this space to be more of a conversation and share my experience of life and bring other guests on and they can share theirs as well. So rather than this being a teaching platform, yeah, you'll absolutely learn stuff, but I'm not doing this as I'm teaching you things. I'm just going to share my experience of my awakening to spirituality, how it actually evolved and where I got to now. And through that process, maybe there'll be things in there that can support you. So, I spoke in the last video about the moment that I actually changed everything, and it was with the death of my younger brother, and how that loss can just take you places you just have never been before. So for most people, when they have their what we call a spiritual awakening, it's it's around some event. It's a loss of something. So, a loss of a loved one, a loss of a business, it's a loss of money, it's a loss of a partner, a house, or there's some sort of loss involved that takes you into your depths where you feel almost helpless. And it's in that you start to, discover things about yourself that you never knew until you've met yourself in grief. I don't think you've ever met yourself. And I just don't think you can ever judge anybody for grief because we all handle it so differently. But yeah, it's such a internal experience because nothing makes sense on the external. Nothing makes sense internally either. But I just found myself like really wanting to just hide away and pretend the world didn't exist. When Corey died, it was a real because it was such a sudden death as well, and I just got off the phone to him, it didn't seem real. And so for so long, there was just that, just disbelief that it actually happened. So it takes you, your mind just can't make sense of it. So it's like I found my mind like reaching for things to make sense. And also it started like I've always been somebody that believes in magic and I saw that I've always seen the world differently. I've always had that, more positive aspect of life. I've spent, oh God, it'd be about 38 years of a career as a hairdresser before doing what I'm doing now. And that set me up so beautifully for what I do now because being a hairdresser, you're having such an intimate relationship with people and talking to people in their happiest times when you're doing their hair for their wedding or a birthday or some event. And then there's those times where they're going off to the funeral of their partner or their mum, or they're sitting in your chair and they actually get the phone call to say that somebody's passed. Like, so to be in that really intimate space with someone, I've never really, I've never ever taken that for granted. I think it's something so beautiful. I've loved every part of my career because of the space that I get to be in with other people. And yeah, not just talk about the weather and what are you doing on the weekend, but my clients and I, even from very early on in my apprenticeship, would get down into that nitty-gritty. So just watching people and listening to their stories and seeing their patterns over the years, you learn a lot by observing. And I am an empath. If you don't know what an empath is, we have this incredible ability. It's a bloody superpower that we can feel what other people are feeling. We can feel what's going on energetically, cosmically. It's a sensitivity to energy. And so we can be in a room and somebody might be sitting across from us with a smile on their face, and yet we can feel that they're sad. There's some parts of being an empath that until you actually learn about it can be quite bothersome for us because a lot of us are, because we can feel everything we know, then we sometimes can find it difficult to understand what actually belongs to me and what actually belongs to that person and everybody else in the world. So when you're younger and you don't understand it, you can think that it's you. So you can feel like, oh my God, I'm so moody. I'm so emotional. I'm so stressed. I'm so angry. I'm so like all of these things. But depending on the environment of the people that you're spending your time with, can depend on your experience of your life because you will be picking up on other people's experiences and other people's emotions. So until you learn to observe rather than absorb, being an empath can be quite challenging. And for a lot of us, I mean, for me, I'll just talk about myself, but I came from a space of not being confident, of not feeling, my self-worth wasn't very high. Um, I always felt less than. I was a major people pleaser because being, a hairdresser, you're constantly of service, but I took it to mean that I am a servant. So I would not go to the toilet, I wouldn't eat, I would drink Coke and a smoke, smoked my brains out. It's the only time I actually got a breath because we never stopped. So there was like this feeling that this being a servant to everybody else. And because I had like low confidence and a lack of worth, when I saw that it made people happy, I did it more. And so that's what we do as empaths. All we want to do is make people happy. We want to see people like pleased and happy and having a great time. And if that comes from us, then we just amplify that and we do it more and more and more until we know better. There's I don't know if you know of Maya Angelou, but she's one of my absolute favorites. And one of her quotes, she said, when we know better, we can do better. And so I live by that now. I just think there's so many times in my life that maybe I've judged myself or somebody else has judged me for doing things differently or changing my mind or veering off and pivoting that way. And it was because like once I knew better, I could do better. So, so as an empath, like the spiritual awakening and understanding of an empath sort of goes hand in hand because when we feel, we really deeply feel. And when we go internal, it's a very, very deep internal experience of our life. Um, and I think that grief actually took me into that understanding of my empath because for the first time in my life, instead of like being outward and being giving to everybody else, I actually just went inwards and I closed down. I completely closed down. And I honestly think it was about a 3-year period that I closed down for. I don't remember coming up for air much. I felt really quiet. I think being an empath and feeling all those feels as heavily and as to the extent that I did, I wanted to shut it off. I wanted to stop feeling. And so I really took myself so inward that I almost went cold. And that didn't happen straight away because I was just so like at that loss. But, at that 2-year mark, that 3-year mark, I was really like, this is, yeah, I just want to shut myself off and I don't want to love. I really also found myself even distancing myself from people I love so that should they go, I didn't feel that level of pain again. So there was a real like that empath experience of like, no, I cannot feel that amount of pain ever again. I don't want it. So I even found myself like not wanting to be around my dad, who was my favorite person. So yeah, there's so many things attached to the grief, but the one thing that I really noticed was it took me inward instead of constantly looking outside. And it took me to a time when, for the first time, I actually went into silence. Um, and of course, it was forced silence. I didn't choose it. Well, I did choose it. Let's just face that, I did. But unconsciously chose it because I just didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to be in life. And so I took myself, or, I'd sit in a corner. I remember there was a chair here There used to be a chair here because this used to be our lounge room, and I would sit in that chair and I would stare at that wall. The mural wasn't on the wall then, there was actually nothing on the wall. And I used to just stare at the wall for like hours, sometimes an entire day, because I just didn't want to be in life. But what that silence started to do was I started to actually meet myself, and I met myself in my grief. And what is that actually? What am I even saying there? It's like that before then, I lived this, it was great. I loved my life, but it was that very outward expression. It was what I could do to please everybody else. There was no thought for myself or what I needed or what I liked. I had no idea what I liked, had no idea of anything to do with how I felt because I was so busy feeling everybody else. And I remember I bought this book, and in it, it had all these questions that you could ask yourself, and then these little, bits where you could answer it. And one of the questions was, what do you love to do? I couldn't answer it and didn't know what I loved to do because I cut hair. I cut hair, I cut hair, and I cut hair. And at that point, I loved cutting hair. So I thought that was truly who I was. Like Tracy the hairdresser, that's who I was. I had a massive clientele, loved it. It was so great. But that was my identity. And it was all about serving everybody else. So when this question came up, what do you desire? I don't know. And I just remember I was sitting in a coffee shop doing this, and I just remember thinking, this is just fascinating that I actually have no idea. I could answer that question for pretty much every client I had, but I couldn't actually answer it for myself. So the catalyst to open us up spiritually, it's not like this spiritual awakening where you go, whoa, oh my God, I'm seeing angels. It's not about that. It's the first time truly in your life that you look inward rather than outward. And it begins to change absolutely everything. Absolutely everything. Let's see where this conversation takes us. I'll see you next time.